How solid is the future of Fred Vasseur in Ferrari? Can a team leader stay in office when the car disappoints and the national press claims for his head? Today I reveal everything that is not being said publicly about the renewal of Vasseur, and what that says of the true state of Ferrari. Since Frédéric Vasseur assumed the leadership of the Ferrari team in 2023, the expectation was not simply a progressive improvement. It was about completely transforming a structure that for years has been trapped between the historical pressure of its legacy and the inability to execute at the height of its technical potential. Vasseur arrived with an aura of pragmatism, backed by his experience in smaller structures such as Alfa Romeo, but the challenge in Maranello is an incomparable magnitude. Ferrari is not another team. It is a national institution, a symbolic representation of Italian excellence. Therefore, every movement of the equipment, each result on the track and every strategic decision is dissected with an intensity that no other team faces. Benedetto Vigna, CEO of Ferrari, is fully aware of the weight that chair that Vasseur occupies. In a sport where perception is everything, even more than short-term results, Vigna cannot be allowed to show weakness in its executive decisions. The public declaration during the Great Prize of Britain was carefully calculated. "We are in July and we are discussing. We have just lunched together." It is a phrase that seeks neutrality, but reveals something deep. It is not an unconditional support statement. It is not an imminent confirmation. It is, in essence, a political maneuver, a way of maintaining pressure on Vasseur without yet publicly committed. This ambiguity in Vigna's communication has a strategic reason. Internally, an unofficial audit of Vasseur's performance has begun in Ferrari. Beyond track performance, its leadership is being evaluated about technical departments, its ability to integrate key figures such as Leclerc and Diego Tondi, and their ability to retain talent in the middle of a growing war of signings within the paddock. Modern Formula One is no longer just speed and strategy, it is also a battle for engineers, by elite human resources, and for maintaining internal cohesion in the middle of the media hurricane. Italian media have been especially hard. Historical publications such as the Gazzetta dello Sport and Corriere della will have insinuated that Ferrari's dome is divided with respect to Vasseur's future. Some voices within the board of directors of Ferrari, led by John Elkann, do not look good at the constant ups and downs of the team at key moments. There is concern because, despite good intentions and some partial improvements in 2024, in 2025 the technical project seems to have evolved. The SF-25 has not made the qualitative leap that was expected, and that translates into a lack of concrete results. Vigna, as an executive with a scientific mentality, remember that it comes from the technological sector and not of motoring, demands measurable results and organizational efficiency. For him, every season is an investment. And like any CEO of a large company, it needs to justify its decisions before shareholders, investors, and, in this case, millions of tifosi around the world. Therefore, Vasseur's renewal has become a symbol. It is not a technical decision. It is a declaration of principles. If Vasseur is renewed without a clear improvement in performance, what message would be sent? That Ferrari accepts mediocrity, that the address is satisfied with instability, and that is why Vigna has opted for an intermediate posture, maintaining the conversation open, showing accessible, but also conditioning any negotiation to what happens on the track in the next great awards. Because in Formula One, time does not forgive, and every race that passes without organizational clarity is a career that erodes the credibility of the project. Should Ferrari risk another structural breakdown or hold on to continuity with the hope that this time, finally, the pieces fit? That is the question that Benedetto Vigna is obliged to answer, not only as CEO, but as a custodian of the future of the most legendary rack of motoring. One of the biggest conflict points has been the transition to a pull rod suspension system both in the front and rear. This choice, inspired by concepts already explored by teams such as Red Bull and McLaren, theoretically had to provide a lower center of gravity and a better integration of aerodynamic flow in the lower area of the car. But in practice, it has unexpectedly complicated the balance of the car. The SF-25 requires an extremely low configuration with respect to the soil to optimize the aerodynamic load generated by the soil effect. This implies that any imperfection in the asphalt, any rebound in the pianos, or any variation in the track conditions can drastically alter the behavior of the car. Leclerc, newly incorporated technical director, has publicly explained that the design philosophy of the SF-25 was based on total re-engineering, with emphasis on dynamic behavior and redistribution of the masses. But these intentions have run into a crucial challenge. The car is not predictable. It is fast in simulations and in certain ideal scenarios, but highly inconsistent in real career conditions. This generates an additional load on the pilots, who must constantly adapt to a car that does not respond the same turn after return. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton have had to adjust their driving style to compensate for the structural deficits of the SF-25, and still the results have been disparate. All this raises a crucial doubt. Ferrari is building a car to compete or a prototype too advanced to be tamed in a season. Because while other teams such as McLaren have opted for an aggressive but progressive evolution, Ferrari has launched into a structural revolution that, for the moment, does not offer guarantees. And in Formula One, time is a luxury that no team with aspirations to the title can afford to waste. The SF-25, more than a fighting tool, has become a reflection of Ferrari's internal contradictions. Ambition without balance, innovation without stability, speed without control. The arrival of Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, has been another internal pressure catalyst. Its incorporation was presented as the master coup that would end up consolidating the Vasseur project, but the initial result has been much more complex. Hamilton not only brought experience and talent, but also standards of demand of a pilot accustomed to the operational perfection of Mercedes. In Ferrari, the British has had to face not only a difficult car, but an operational structure that still drags old habits of uncoordination at critical moments. The most worrying thing is that these errors are not limited to a career. They are symptoms of a structural fragility that goes from the communication between the wall and the pilots to the equipment to analyze data under pressure. And when we talk about pilots like Leclerc and Hamilton, that inefficiency becomes even more important. Both have different driving styles, and both require fine adjustments in their respective monoplays to perform to the maximum. But Ferrari seems to be failing to customize those configurations and extract the best of each. The result has been a worrying inconsistency. Weekends in which the car seems competitive, followed by events where it simply disappears from the avant-garde stalls. In this context, the moment in which Ferrari is located is especially delicate. It is not just about improving the car or closing the gap with McLaren and Red Bull. It is about reaffirming a sports project that, if it does not achieve stability this year, can collapse in its structural base. Because if Ferrari does not convince his own pilots, if he fails to strengthen his coaching staff, and if he does not show that he has learned from the mistakes of the past, Vasseur's continuity could only be a pause before another traumatic restart. And this is where the pressure on Benedetto Vigna intensifies again. Because decisions cannot be made only based on partial results or performance metrics. They must respond to a clear vision of equipment. Ferrari needs to build a coherent identity between its technical culture, its strategic execution, and its human management. And if that is not achieved under the current leadership, not only will the figure of Fred Vasseur be at stake, Ferrari's viability will be at stake as a real candidate for the championship in this new era of Formula One. The dilemma about the renewal of Frédéric Vasseur is not simply an administrative discussion. It represents one of those silent but determining inflection points in Ferrari's recent history. What is at stake is not only the continuity of a team director, but the philosophy with which Ferrari wants to project himself in the immediate future. Because every decision that is made from the dome has a much deeper echo within the paddock, of the factory, and especially in the perception that the world of motor racing has on the Scuderia. Vasseur's renewal would be a clear sign that the address is committed to stability, for a medium-long-term strategy, even if the immediate results are not brilliant. On the other hand, dispensing with it could be interpreted as a tacit admission of failure and a return to instability that for more than a decade has plagued Ferrari's performance. But that choice is not simple. Continuity makes sense when project foundations show solidity, although the results take to arrive. The problem is that the SF-25 has been inconsistent, the team has shown strategic hesitation, and the external pressure of the media themselves is reaching almost unbearable levels. In that context, renewing Vasseur demands an almost blind conviction that the course is correct. And that is where the most painful doubt arises. Does Ferrari really believe in his own project? What Ferrari needs to solve is not just who leads the box's wall. It is much deeper. It requires answering structural questions. Does the team have a modern technical architecture capable of evolving to the rhythm of teams such as McLaren and Red Bull? Does it have a sufficiently mature organizational culture to support a plan of several years without yielding to the pressure of the immediate result? Can you effectively manage a pair of pilots as demanding and complex as Hamilton and Leclerc? Any decision on Vasseur will have inevitable consequences. If it is renewed, you will have to demonstrate urgently that you can consolidate the team in the technical, the human, and the strategic. You will have to effectively integrate the new updates, enhance internal communication, and above all, recover the total confidence of its pilots. If it is replaced, Ferrari must once again face the risk of restarting a learning cycle with a new director, something that has already proven to be devastating in the recent past. In this context, the figure of Benedetto Vigna charges an even greater relevance. As CEO, not only represents the last institutional word, it also embodies the corporate vision of what Ferrari wants to be as a sports team. And that vision is now under scrutiny. Vigna has to make a decision that can define the next era of Ferrari, consolidate an evolving project, or start another chapter full of uncertainties.